Actually, because let's start on time. Yeah. Okay. So first of all, welcome all of you. I think just to set the context, this meetup and this conversation we are having is to try and understand about the landscape of cybersecurity. And as we say, it's a ever evolving landscape of cybersecurity. And almost all of us have, at some point or the other, got into some trouble uh, being on the digital platform, being on the digital highway, whether we are an end user, whether we are doing some payments, whether we are enterprise professionals, right? So we want to understand a kind of a complete perspective. And obviously, this is in the context that Succeed Ventures has released a report, a very comprehensive report on cybersecurity. And I would certainly urge all the participants as we go along also to, go on their website and check out the report. Yeah. But joining me today for this wonderful conversation on cybersecurity is Umesh Thota, Sarvana, and Dhruv Khanna, right? So I would first of all want all of you to give your introduction and you know maybe your opening remarks very briefly, because I have a lot of questions and we'll of course take the questions from the participants also as we go along, and we'll keep it as interactive as possible. Hopefully I'll be able to take as many questions as possible from the participants also, right? And we have a range of questions starting from what is the kind of scene in terms of cybersecurity, especially in the pandemic context, then about startups, then about products and services, what is the ecosystem in India like. So there are a whole lot of questions, and I'm sure we'll have so much to get an insight from all of you. But I would request you to start with your introduction and uh, specifically related to cybersecurity. What work do you do? Yeah, what is your focus area in cybersecurity? Because for a lot of us, cybersecurity is one piece, but I'm sure there's so much compartmentalized within cybersecurity. So I think that will be of very great use for our users also, for our listeners also, for our audience also to understand, right? So Umesh, do you want to start off with your introduction?
Sure, sir. Uh, Hi, I'm Umesh, a founder of Authbase. We have been into threat mitigation space for last 4 years. What it essentially means is you have bots, you have viruses, you have worms, you have ransomware. These actually are breaking through your security bubble, and they're infecting all through. And that means your traditional firewalls and antiviruses are failing because they're always playing a catch-up game. So we actually are uh, we call it as questioning the status quo, where we are using machine learning and deep learning to identify threats like these without signatures or rules, so that we can block them before they cause threat and disrupt the business continuity of companies.
Right, right. So as I understand, it is about foreseeing the kind of possible threats, and you're saying you use a lot of deep technology, AI, machine learning and all that to try and anticipate what kind of threats can come from anywhere, in terms
It's
of, am I right there in
more of
understanding?
intent detection rather than anticipation. Basically, we look for behavior changes, behavior modeling that occurs, so that we can identify these kind of threats in fileless viruses, so that we can identify and block them real time.
Right, right. Thanks. Yeah. Sarvana?
Hi, my name is Saravana Kumaran. I am from Thrive Digital uh, in India. I think Thrive is one of the captives for a US-based healthcare payer and provider. And my responsibility with Thrive is to be responsible for their privacy, cybersecurity, and compliance. Within cybersecurity, I think our focus is on two ways, right? One is to see how do we make sure that we secure our perimeter within India, to make sure that we hold on to the trust and credibility of the customers back in the state side. Second is to how do we grow the service offering in cybersecurity from India to the state side. I think these are the two pronged responsibilities that I'm trying to work on. But I think over the last few years we've been seeing ever increasing frequency of cyber attacks, and with a lot more sophistication, right? Now I think that is possibly causing the world economy 1% of its GDP every year. I think that is significant. But I think what we hope to see is that 2020 is past us. We probably would like to, you know, not remember this 2020 for whatever reasons that we all know. But I think we can never forget 2020, right? So what we hope to see in 2021 is to tap into these innovations that are happening in cybersecurity space, especially these startups that are looking to be promising in India and elsewhere. And how do we really tap into this capability and put in greater defense and offensive mechanism?
Right. Thank you so much for your introduction, Sarvana. Dhruv?
Yeah, sure. So thanks. So been in cybersecurity for last 20 years, and I think this is my first startup. Data Resolve started in 2014-15, right? And while setting up this entity, I think one of the key things which I've experienced based on the past, working with the likes of IBM in India and US, right? I think there's a huge opportunity which exists, right? And I think one of the areas which we realize is SMEs and mid-market, slightly on a different context, right? There's a huge opportunity for cybersecurity where I think the CISOs, CIOs, I think they're not spending energy too much on the investing on right set of controls, right? And there we see there's an opportunity for Indian product ecosystem, right? And that ecosystem has to emerge, right? Largely to cater this part of the problem statement living with the SME mid market, right? So I think that's the sweet spot. That's we looked at it, especially in what we do, right? And last, I think in summary, I would say that this is an area which is growing. Earlier, there was a concern about onboarding an Indian product cybersecurity company, right? Right. I don't think so that that is a taboo or an area of concern today, because I think we are more agile, right? We're more adaptive, and we're very strong when it comes to co-creation of controls when it comes to customers, right? So I think and then definitely agility has added a lot of value in terms of how do you deliver the product in no time, right? So I would say this is an exciting journey, right? And I think the market is moving.
Great, great. I think the introduction itself provided by all three of you has kind of created so many questions for me to take forward. But I'll start with probably the context that we are all into. And like Sarvana hinted, uh, uh, 2020 in mild terms has been very interesting, right? That's where I would qualify 2020 as, and it continues to be very interesting. And the most important aspect is that there has been a huge behavioral change because people have been forced to go digital, whether it is for payments, whether it's for learning, whether it is for doing business, whether it's for doing day-to-day transactions, right? I mean, what started as a temporary work from home kind of a thing is now here to stay, as people say, right? Even the government of India just a few days back changed its guidelines and said that, you know what, you can work from anywhere in India. So I want to understand from all three of you, what is the biggest, you know, trend that you are seeing in cybersecurity in this new paradigm, in this new context, right? I'm sure there's been a lot of challenge which has increased, right? Like in many people say the kind of digitization that's happening now, what would have happened probably in a decade has probably happened in 1 year, right? And I'm sure from a cybersecurity point of view also, the challenges would have also been very huge. So I just want your initial remarks on what is one or two particular trends that you have seen in cybersecurity, either in terms of challenge or in terms of coming up with innovations or anything that strikes you when you think about 2020 pandemic and cybersecurity. Uh, I would like all three of you to share your perspective on this to start with.
Sure. So Dhruv here, I'll take a lead here. Right. So I think thanks, Pankaj. I think it's a very interesting question. I would say in the current, I call it post-pandemic. I will no more call it a pandemic. I'd rather giving a more positive context that we're out of pandemic, right? So I think one, it accelerated the need and it accelerated the, I would say, acceptance of cybersecurity, especially in the minds of the customer, right? Earlier, it was more of a reaction-driven or a compliance-driven, right? Engagements, right? But having an effective control vis-a-vis having something which is more of a tick mark, I think that mindset has changed, right? It become a need, it become a necessity. I think that's one thing which COVID has accelerated the mindset. So one is the mindset, right? Second biggest challenge, right? When we speak to a couple of customers, I said we all understand this defense in depth fortress model, right? And we say, sir, it's more like a virtual fortress, right? Now you have so many fortresses because every employee is virtually outside the network, right? You have invested heavily on gateway perimeter security controls, right? Building a lot of compliances around it, right? Now literally your entire workforce is outside. The data is sitting on the cloud, sitting on the endpoint, right? So the virtually the controls, the landscape, the threat vector has completely changed, right? Which has actually opened, or I would say, given a lot of opportunity, a lot of product companies to build right set of controls, especially when the employee is no more part of the virtual game, which is like behind the virtual perimeter security, right? So I think that's the second change which has happened, right? And I think we see a strong need and demand of having an endpoint controls, right, which is picked up very well, right? And I think most of us on the call would definitely agree that this is an area which is growing big time. Endpoint earlier used to be a redundant control, to be very candid, pre-COVID, and we all used to struggle a lot, right? Post-COVID, I think it's become a necessity, right? So I would say it accelerated, right? That's the second part, okay? Third and the most interesting thing, right, especially when we look at it from the investor standpoint, right? Cybersecurity, people don't want to understand, or they say, I don't understand what this industry all about, right? Today, every investor, be it in B2C, B2B, right, claims to want to get into this space, right? So that's another thing which has actually accelerated. So there's an acceleration on new business ideas because of this endpoint. There's an acceleration on acceptance. There's an acceleration on investment. So I would say all three put together, it's a great wave for us and great initiative and great time for all of us. That's broadly from my side.
Wonderful. I'm sure that that's brought a lot of positive outlook and encouraging outlook to the whole industry as such. But I would request Umesh and Sarvana to also add their perspectives.
Dhruv is point on. Uh, we have been saying for a very long time that the security bubble that we are inside is not secure anymore. And every time there is a ransomware hit, that momentary shake that happens, everybody realizes that is we are not secure enough, and then they go back to status quo. And all of a sudden, because you are forced today, you have no choice. You are moving out of your bubble, working from home. There are a lot of interdependencies. Your network is no more secure. All these factors are forcing people, even the companies that are actually enabling their employees to work, they're forcing them to be more security aware. We realize that companies are becoming security aware, and that is helping us because it becomes an easier understanding to see what their actual problem is. Earlier, you go to them, they say 100 different problems, and they don't understand which is what responsible for. Today, now they're more, awareness is more, and also from their perspective, they know exactly what is happening. COVID has also accelerated the other side of things. Why ransomware earlier just used to encrypt the systems. Now it is doing data exfiltration, taking the data out, putting it in dark web. It is also because of these factors, it's creating a non-compliance with other companies that you are working with because you're having their data with you, working on it. So that security need that was earlier, hey, if we had backup systems, that would have been fine, has now become no matter what, we have to make sure that these niche solutions are going to be in our network. So they'll be protecting us from new generation attacks or viruses like ransomware is the new understanding of the customer market. And this is good because from a security perspective, we know that these are the things, there are different kinds of measures that you take: preventive, reactive, adaptive. But from a customer's perspective, we don't want a customer to come to us when his hands are burned. We rather make sure that he is safe. So that builds a good relationship, that builds a lot more in terms of value that is going to be delivered.
Wonderful. Sarvana?
Great. I think the one good thing about this code is that it has permanently disrupted the way cybersecurity baseline looked, right? I think, before COVID, we were all happy sitting inside a physical office with physical perimeter controls and happily thinking that we were secure. And then, of course, we were forced to, within weeks or two, to move our bases to any remote locations, preferably our home. Now, what that has also caused is now the regulators outside the country and within the country, as well as the usual auditors that we've had, who traditionally looked at controls as physical controls, having Chinese walls, ODCs, not work from home, because that is considered to be lack of control. All these have permanently changed. Even when COVID is past us, if you go back to the old controls, it will look very ridiculous and slightly comical. Hence, it is very important for all the cybersecurity professionals to redefine these standards and controls to suit the current new normal. I think that is where the challenge is going to lie, and the opportunity is also going to lie.
Wonderful. So I think, yeah, and all of you have put it in such simple and understandable terms that I don't think I need to kind of rephrase or re-emphasize anything that you mentioned. So now that the demand has increased and the awareness has increased, my next logical question is: are we up there to meet this challenge? Do we have enough startups? Do we have enough companies? And also, since at least two of you here represent startup, how's the perception of the client? Are they okay to work with startups, or do they still want to go back to the big brands? How's that happening? What has been your understanding in this sense? Startups versus big brand. Do people still go to the big brands only, or are they okay to work with the startups also? And how's the startup ecosystem kind of thriving in this new demand format?
Okay. So I think definitely yes. I would say there is a I think great amount of acceptance. I would say from the customers, CIOs, CISOs we interact with. I would actually give the credit to the government. To be very honest, I think because the Make in India program, right? Sentiments attached to the Make in India, correct, and thanks to this China thing, what happened, right? People still have the sentimental value that hey, it's our company, it's an Indian company, right? And I think we should take pride of saying this: we are an Indian origin, indigenized product, right? Though I'm not sure, but I don't operate in government too much, to be very candid, for various other reasons, right? But yes, especially in the corporate sector, I think there is a huge demand. I think customers are very happy they're seeing it as an Indian company, and they know, as I said earlier, it brings agility, speed, time to respond, time to build, time to plug the bugs, issues, right, or adapt the controls as per the client requirement. Yes, there's a huge amount of acceptance. That's point number one. Okay. Point number two, I think what customers started seeing, especially in this COVID, there's a lot of change in their entire IT infrastructure also, because I've seen a lot of transition happen in terms of application onboarding, which used to be more on-premise, it is more on cloud right now, right? A lot of devices are virtually outside the network, right? A lot of global applications. It's not about cyber security, it's also about small applications. They started embedding into their network infrastructure, IT infrastructure, right? Which brings a challenge of having a product which can manage risk around it, right? And I think nothing better than an Indian product because of agility, because of the speed and the change we can bring on the table vis-a-vis a global organization. The most interesting thing which we have seen, and I think Sarvana can add to this point, is especially when we work with the international product companies, especially being a customer, right? I think there are a lot of TNCs, SOWs goes in the engagement, right? Here, we just sign the SOW because there's a need, because of the process we're trying to build it. But I think we still keep the SOW outside. I want my customer to be happy, correct? And I think this has added a lot of value statement, especially for the customers to engage in Indian company. And I think mindset have changed. People have started accepting when a lot of these have become unicorns in the other deep tech space, right? So they say, why not? Why not give an opportunity? And everybody learned how the China has grown as a country in terms of building the strong deep tech product ecosystem. So I think it's picked up pretty well. I would say there's a lot of acceptance now. I don't think so there's an area of concern. What I used to see 5 years back being an Indian product company, I think today our friends who are starting up companies, I think they are far better, and their acceptability is much higher, which we used to struggle earlier. That's my view.
Absolutely. Earlier, 5 years ago, or even a few years back, the level of commitment or towards any kind of POCs that you would have from customer would always be open-ended. You will always be trying to be that first person to get that first customer and stuff. Now it has become completely changed. Today you're more focused towards product, you're more focused towards these are the services that you're giving to your customer through your product, exactly what you are already there. And most of the time you are competing with other guys in the Gartner quadrant. And DSCI released an entire booklet of all the startups, what service offerings that they are providing for all the companies in India. And basically that is A to Z of all the startups products that are there. And it becomes super easy for anybody to actually compare, see, test it out, or to even evaluate against other products. And today technology is not that different, right? You're not essentially creating, there is no technology gap. Most of the people who are here or in cybersecurity startups, they're all from the same background. It doesn't matter if you are actually running your company in US or over here. Of course, I come from a belief that if you're building a company, you rather build it in India because it's a great place to build a product, test out, especially because Murphy's Law works very well. And you can fix out all the things that can go wrong, and you can identify those. And then it's a great product to build, scale, sell everywhere. But now India has also become more in terms of accepting. Even government operations have now a different thing. Earlier, you need to have a X amount of dollars of revenue for the government to accept your products. Now they have a GEM portal where startups can register to provide their service offerings. Become super easy for you to even sell it to governments. Of course, start with corporate, start with everybody else. But yeah, that is still a step forward towards different direction, where government is also being more open towards it, and it's nice. These Dhruv is in a very niche space. We are in a very niche space. The problem with cybersecurity in terms of general Indian awareness is practically you just understand two segments of it. If I may be so rough to say it, you only notice the firewall and the endpoint. You don't even see the other things that go in. And this is not just the case with the normal B2C consumer, it's most of the time others as well. And when these new niche solutions come in, they start seeing those immediate value. And because we are very easily reachable, you don't have to, there's no time zone delay, there is no different customer service that you're reaching, you're directly reaching either to the founder or the technical team. We are more easy to actually help them resolve their issue or add those additional values that they need. And it's a very interesting ecosystem as well. Cybersecurity, thankfully, is one place where our competition is more or less very friendly. We actually recommend each other because we know what each other's products are. So it's it's pretty cool for us. And yeah, so that's pretty much the good and the
Great.
the whole scale.
Great. Sarona, do you want to add something?
Sure. I think Dhruv was mentioning, right? I think it is good to see, the startup cybersecurity companies are being well accepted within India. On the international side, yes, there is acceptance, but there is miles to get covered, right? Traditionally, the CISOs and the CEOs of the world have been comfortable working with the big fours and the referred companies by the big four, which is the RSAs of the world and the big brands of the world, right? I think that is a very traditional minimum guarantee kind of an approach. Now, I think while the CISOs would want to do it, they would need to learn how to use multiple cybersecurity companies, services, products in their ecosystem. How do we really build a governance around it? That is the challenge right now, right? How do I really work with Dhruv and Umesh and everybody else, yet have an effective governance around it? Like that is one area that we will continue to mature over time. But I'm pretty bullish that in the next few years we would see a lot more Indian startups, breaking that glass ceiling and getting more internationalized. I think most of the reason you will see that even today the startups are trying to register themselves in the US with at least having one registered office in the US, right? Primarily to claim some credibility and trust. I'm also US company, but I think we have to go beyond that. Being registered in India, still being accepted as an international brand is where we need to target. I'm sure in the next couple of years would be the period for us to wait and reach that height.
Very nice. I think very balanced view we have across the panel. Now, there's some interesting question which has come from Facebook from Vikrant. And the question goes, while growth of other sector are considered and seen in the positive light, growth in cybersecurity could be seen as something which is linked with negative image of dealing with growing criminal practices. So how do we handle the role of innovation to deal with growing criminality? Are we always catching up with criminals or getting ahead using deep tech solutions? I hope all of you understand, right? So
true.
In terms of attracting talent, in terms of innovation, so I think the question is very...
So I think it's a very good question, right? I think, but I think if you look at an analogy, right, having a large armed force is a good thing, right? Having a good amount of police force is a good thing for a country which is having such complexities, right? Yes, cybersecurity is seen as a negative professional outlook primarily because of the work that it does. But I think cybersecurity professionals are generally, created over a period of 5 years. I think they don't come and graduate out of college and jump to cybersecurity. They come out of the college, pick up the usual job, and then they fall in, love with cybersecurity, or they start liking cybersecurity, and they start building a career towards cybersecurity, right? But I think it has got the negative connotation primarily because cybersecurity professionals are not openly celebrated, right? They don't get the limelights, the awards, the wows from the customers directly or from the management directly. Hence, it is slightly seen as a less attractive and slightly negative or cynicism surrounded profession. But however, people that are in the profession already, I think I'm sure that they like the profession more than anyone else, and they are fairly self-motivated. So I'm sure that perception exists. But today we have come a long way that the colleges have started introducing cybersecurity courses. I'm seeing engineering colleges offering cybersecurity, which I think good proof that it is now becoming widely accepted, practice to adopt such defense and offense, domain as well, like cybersecurity.
Great.
So I'll love to actually give a different understanding, adding to what Savanand is saying. One of the things is cybersecurity has always been a catch-up game. You have a virus, you try to find a signature for it or its behavior, then find a rule for it, and then incorporate, firewalls in your antiviruses. And this has been fairly we call it internally as evasion evolution. And for us, in terms of cybersecurity, we have always been reactive to this evasion evolution. That means basically viruses are trying different ways of evolving towards evasion, and we are trying to then find those new signatures, new variants, and add it to our system to detect it. And this is now changing. In the last few years, there are companies, including ours, who are actually come up with AI solutions that are able to detect without the signatures and rules, and that is causing a new wave towards identifying threats. And this doesn't need to be very, very specific, but you have also evolution towards different industry specific sectors. For example, there are industries with critical infrastructures, hospitals, banking, where you need to maintain that business continuity, where you need to maintain this stability, and different kinds of systems need to be online. So solutions like our solutions like the systems that are able to actually identify different kinds of threats, whether online or offline, have become very popular and are progressing towards innovation, because we are now moving towards that segment. 5 years ago, the number of subsegments that cybersecurity today have was in half. Today, there's so many subsegments that have been added into it, that there is so much innovation that is being pushed, especially because that we don't want to be no more into the catch-up game. We want to be more towards behavior analytics. We want to be more towards modeling, towards intent detection. Yeah. So basically, all this is actually helping change how people perceive cybersecurity. And also the biggest factor today by next year, the amount of cybersecurity professionals in deficit would be huge. I can't recall the number, but the numbers are really huge. That means there is a big opportunity towards anybody. Universities, right from Maryland to many other universities, are giving cybersecurity master's degrees. And that means that's a very nice way to pick it up, then go add value where you are studying and working together. And most of the cybersecurity certifications are created in such a way that you're always up to date. And that is why your certificate is still valid. It gives you points and you add on to your certificate for the validity of it. So you are still continuously learning. And that learning culture is something that everybody likes, because it's cyber. So what you're learning is actually keeping you secure and you're having fun at it. So the ecosystem is completely unique from different ecosystems, and it's also fun. But the point is, it takes a good, forgive the analogy, it's like wine. Once you start having a liking for it, you actually go deeper into it. So it's basically just that. Dhruv, you want to add some more?
No, I think broadly covered, and I think I agree with what Savana and Umesh has shared about this, right? So I think it's always, I would say, I think one on the employee side or on the hiring side, I think I would say there's always a deficit. There not be a trend, because as you rightly pointed out, that criminals are always ahead in terms of the curve when we are building it, right? But I'll add a different perspective to it, right? When we are building a product, right, we have two things in mind, right? So one is we build a product to actually mitigate the known risk, known challenges, right? And there's something called an unknown, right? Now, when I talk about unknown, and it's a very interesting thing, right? When you talk about unknown, is something going to happen which is not known to most of us, right? And which may not drive the revenue to the company, right? Something which is known, I call it me too. And I would prefer to build a me too to build a balance of revenue also, right? So I think Indian companies today, right, if are heavily funded, right, they will go on the wow statement, right? Where those who are driven by baselines and revenues, trust me, they will try to balance between the me too and the wow statement, right? So that's the way I try to link this with the revenue game and say what we're trying to build. So, and I think both are relevant, and I think both are in demand, to be very candid.
Great. In fact, that leads me to my next question, which incidentally also has come from one of our audience, is that we have a legacy of Indian IT industry, right? I mean, for the last 30 years, it's grown and it has made its own name. However, when we look back, there is also a little bit of critical discussion saying that we've been very large in services, but not necessarily so much in the product space. And now in the last few years, there is a clear shift, and whether it's startups, whether it's the large companies, they are talking much more about products and innovation. So I want to understand, in cybersecurity, how is it? Is it following the traditional IT industry model, where we are going to have large armies of services driven companies, or are we looking at it from a product perspective, or is it a mix? I don't know. So I just want to know quickly, very briefly, your views on this. And there are quite a few questions which are coming in, so I'll pick up one question at a time.
Okay. So I think on this particular thing, right? Again, I would say pre-COVID and post-COVID. Okay. Pre-COVID, it is more service-driven. Pre-COVID, it is more, I would say, skill-driven, right? And pre-COVID, it is more about complexity-driven when it talks about embedding security controls in the customer environment. Today, I personally feel most of the CXOs, CISOs, I think they want 100% of complete automation, because automation is the way to go. I don't think so. I want to bet on any threat which is linked to a skill, and the skill is not available because of he's working from home, and I can't accept this. That I can't accept this risk, right? So I think automation played a very important role. So earlier it used to be a product. There's service wrapper around it, right? And there's a skill around it, and then we talk about upscaling, reskilling, and all that thing used to happen. And a lot of these certifications, all this thing happening, right? But I personally feel most of these computer security degrees post COVID may go redundant. I'm slightly making a weird statement here, right? But why it is so? Because of automation, we all product companies are going to bring on the table. Imagine a scenario where you are doing everything automated. We're talking about deep learning, we're talking about AI, we're talking about ML and all that. Trust me, this is going to add more power to the products. And while you add more power to the products, the question comes is, can this become commoditized? And the day we started thinking of building a product in a commoditized way, trust me, the customer is the utmost beneficiary of this entire game, right? And while this is happening, the skill required to automate, the skill required to manage incidents, the skill required to control those risks, right, will completely change. Then whatever I read in books are no more relevant as on last year, not even today, I'm saying, right? So I think that's the way we look at the business, and I think that's the way the automation is going to play a huge game when it comes to prioritization. It's a consumerization of product, or I say, can I Uberize my cyber security control in a slightly different context? But this is what is going to rule. Yeah.
Dhruv is perfectly on point. From a cybersecurity perspective, services and products were always on the niche place. That means it's not about which space do you want to be in, but basically what kind of service do you want to deliver? Is it a continuous offering where your value is delivered through a product, or is it a continuous offering where your value is delivered with a huge team that is working continuously? Personally, most of the time, it's always a choice between entrepreneurs whether they want to go towards the services side. We know startups who are in services side. They do teams manage security, and there are startups that are completely in product side. This line has become very, very clear of late, because the customer has also has that understanding now. Okay, oh, this is a product, and I can of course there are features and there is a feature request, but yeah, I cannot ask for certain things that is nothing to do with the product. And the other side of this is also very interesting, where companies have become very, very specific in terms of their requests and their asks as well. If you go to a meeting and they say, we ask what is the problem you're facing, they are very, very clear in terms of what is that they want, and you can straight away say yes or no. So that's that move towards products and services, that line that is very clear right now, is also helping people choose which way you want to go. And also becoming earlier you need to be either in cyber or need to understand the problem statements in cyber to actually be in services of cyber security. But if you come from a development background, today there are so many startups that would want you, so that you can actually build a product with them, because they already have the cyber knowledge. That means you are actually getting that advantage of not going through the 5 years cycle where you understand cybersecurity and everything else. Of course, then it becomes problem of me and Dhruv to make sure that these guys get the knowledge, these guys retain, and of course these guys deliver with the same quality product. And that's a different question altogether. But yeah, that revolution is actually pretty good for a country like us, because if we have to develop towards cyber, I rather have both number of services and product companies in India as much as possible, because it's something that is not typically oriented towards services as a services companies that are there in India. Cybersecurity services are in a niche of itself, so it's always an added value.
Okay.
Yeah, I think as Dhruv and Umesh said, I think cybersecurity is not going to be a huge scale ever, right? And cybersecurity domain will always be that sweet spot of less than 10%. It will not grow in the scale as you would have seen other technologies or service areas have grown, right? However, it will exist. The products and services will coexist in the right balance, right? You need people to implement the AI solutions or the ML solutions. You need people to monitor it. The skill sets will be different. That's one of the reasons that the cybersecurity professionals can never be coming out of college and say, I'm a cybersecurity professional. You got to keep learning, unlearning, learning and unlearning, I think, throughout your life. till you hang your boot up. So that being said, the opportunities I think for automation is immense. But I think as a cybersecurity professional, that also gives the worry that the access to automation and machine learning is available even for the bad guys, right? I'm sure the future of cybersecurity threat is going to be predominantly an automated attack, right? A weaponized AI coming in and countering another AI. So which is going to be an interesting solution. So the threat in the next 2 years, as we would speak, we will be talking about two bots attacking each other and see which one is going to let something in. So that is going to be the interesting part of cybersecurity evolution in the next couple of years.
It's already happening. Adversarial ML is actually hitting applications that are running on ML models, and it's more harder for you to understand if you're not designing this into your architecture itself by default to make sure that adversarial machine learning technologies are hitting your technology stack. Then you have to go back to the drawing board to actually see how you can actually respond to this. And it's ingenious. It's a lot of fun to actually see that these are technologies. Of course, they're dark. But that also means it's a new opportunity for you to evolve your product, grow your product to make sure that they combat well. Microsoft recently came out with the MITRE Plus architecture, where they have actually integrated everything that is there in the MITRE ATT&CK framework into an ML model so that adversarial networks can be easily identified. And Microsoft stepping in for most people who are not in cyber, Microsoft is the original SOC. They have been maintaining that internal SOC for themselves because they are the ones who are building operating systems and stuff. So they now are into security segment and they're providing this, but them coming out with MITRE ATT&CK framework towards an ML model says that you already have these many attacks frameworks that are available, and you want to make sure that you can freely integrate this to secure yourself. So like Saravanan said, the evolution towards attacks and then defense is going on. It only matters if we are very good. Human beings are very good at identifying differences in a smaller set. AI is very good in doing that in a larger set. Together, the defense is very stronger than any kind of offense that throws at it. So we have to always look at it from that perspective.
Right. So we'll continue this conversation, but just on a lighter note, and so that there's also a little bit of normal this thing. I'm just thinking aloud. It must be so easy for you guys to sell anything in cybersecurity, right? Go create the threat perception and say, boss, if you don't listen to my advice, then I'm not responsible. I think, man, I mean, people should get into cybersecurity. It looks like very easy to sell. I mean, I'm convinced in the last 35-40 minutes, I'm convinced that I should get my company work audited and verified. Where are the gaps and where are the holes? Great, nice.
Might have one customer here that is an easy sell, but we will give you can give the ground reality. That will be great.
But you have a tough competition because I'm going to engage all three of you to do that analysis. Right. I'm asking this question also because the next question that I have here, which is coming from Facebook Live from Mr. Ramakant Desai, is any comments on detailed cybersecurity framework given by RBI for banks? Because implementing such a comprehensive framework will impose huge financial burden. And I think this is not only for RBI and financial framework for the security framework for the banks. I think this is something which keeps coming back common, right? I mean, why cybersecurity? Even on a day-to-day life, right? You go to the doctor and the doctor says, look, invest in your health if you don't want to suffer later. You go to some other department, education, they tell you the same thing. You go to some other department, they tell you the same thing, right? Life is like that, right? Everyone knows that if you invest more and if you do it proactively, you will be saved from the future. But it's not so simple. I'm sure all of you also appreciate if you just take a step back from your own roles in cybersecurity. If you look at it from a company's perspective, if you look at it from a client's perspective, we all understand the importance of investing more and more. But then you have to manage so many constraints in terms of your budget, in terms of where you put that. Are you going to put that for a offsite with your employees, or are you going to put that for the security validation of your work? Are you going to use it for employee engagement, upskilling of your employees? Are you going to use it, right? There are always constraints. I mean, life is never kind to allow you to do what you want to do. So from that broader perspective and taking this specific question in mind, how and I want you to take a slightly more neutral and sympathetic stand now towards your clients also, right? It's very easy to prescribe, but do you see there is a balance and people can still manage, or how do you see that? I mean, what is the kind of feedback you get from your clients? I'm sure a lot of times your clients may tell you, well, we understand what you're saying, but you know what, we have budget constraints. So how do you balance this risk mitigation investment into cybersecurity versus the financial constraints? I think that's what I would be very interested in understanding.
If
Keeping
you
this
look at,
specific question.
yeah, so if you look at RBI, I think it's good to know that RBI has come up with a framework along with very few other regulators that have done in India without waiting for a comprehensive cybersecurity law in India, which today the IT Act 2000 exists. Probably does not have all the teeth that it needs to become very effective, right? It'll come, but I think RBI has gone multiple steps forward to make sure that the financial services industry domain has a framework which is internationally accepted, right? Now, I mean, where is the RBI drawing these reference from? Not just on its own, right? If you look at Singapore, it has got a monetary authority of Singapore, MAS. If you've got Hong Kong, you've got HKMA, right? These monetary authorities have across the world have been defining standards and frameworks to make sure that the customers are finding it safe and trustworthy to bank with you. So that being said, I agree with Mr. Ramakant's comment that it is expensive to implement any change. I think the change is going to be expensive. But I think one of the good things that we can do is that we don't have to go for a full-fledged implementation. It is not going to be those days that we implemented CMMI for 12 months and we said we are level 5. You can prioritize, you can quantify a risk, right? What does not happen always in the right manner is quantification of risk with a dollar value, and then prioritize based on that. If you can do that, I think that will give you a roadmap of how you want to achieve what is being recommended in the framework. That might be a good starting point for you to balance your budget versus what you want to do.
I would like to add to what Ramanand has been saying. One of the good things about the RBI framework is essentially it's saying now the banks are responsible for the customers' data, customers' PI data, customers' information that your bank is storing. That means because we are in a place, especially where we would not move unless there is a compliance or any other hindrance that is going to enforce you to actually be secure. And until the RBI framework, even if you got hacked, it was only recommended that you would notify certain people, and there are different policies under this where one says yes, the other one says nothing, and it was always a gray zone. So this framework actually says very clearly you are responsible if this happens. So make sure these are the things that you need to follow. And of course, it's one of the best things about this is it's a pro endpoint security kind of pro endpoint security framework, because it deals with a lot of aspects of it where data is very, very relevant, and you want to make sure that starting from a machine level, everything else is secure. But absolutely, end of the day, if someone says budget is a constraint, you're building your house, you want to make sure your door is strong enough. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. It's as basic as that. Its security is not quantifiable because it is a required. It's a need. It's not a want. So you want to make sure that budget has security put into it, and especially towards your segment and how important your segment is. You just need to, if you're a healthcare company or bank or any other segment, just Google up. I take out IBM breach report or any other reports and see how badly they were hit, right from manufacturing industry to healthcare to any other industry that is there. So you will understand the space you are in. Viruses, attacks, ransomware, bots, these are automated attacks. They are eons, generations ahead of any kind of security defense that you're throwing. Unless you use these niche solutions, it will still be catching up game. That means you're already at a loss. And then you are actually putting up any kind of budget constraint. It doesn't make sense.
Okay. Right. So there's another question from Ramesh Swaminathan. And the question is, security solution is all about deep tech. How much of research infrastructure is available in India to support product and services company? And he has a follow-up observation, which says that we still seem to rely on research done in Israel or Russia for the underlying algorithms and research, right? So essentially, the point is that what is our capability at the basic fundamental level? How are we progressing? Do you see any progress in that? And as companies, is there some forum where these things are discussed? I think I also am very keen on understanding that. Do we have some kind of a forum in India where such ongoing discussions happen? Because because I mean, the first name that comes to mind when you talk about cybersecurity is obviously Russia, Israel, right? So where are we? Are we doing something in that direction? I'm not saying we need a fix in one day or 1 month, but do you see some progress in that direction? What is our preparation as India?
Dhruv, you want to take this?
Yeah, sure. So I think see one when you look at it from the overall, I would say I don't think so. There is too much dependency on Russia and Israel, especially. I think, and I'll say our internal integration or development, or I would say internal coordination within the system is so weak. Forget about going to Russia and Israel, actually, in the current state, right? Right. There are almost, as per last DSCI report, almost 170 fraud companies, if I remember correctly, the number, right? And I'm sure by this time it will be more than 200, because I'm part of their incubator club, right? And every fortnight or every month we get 6 companies to vet in the cycle, right? Now, within that, I think there is a need to have a stronger integration within the country first, right? That's part number one, right? And I think there's so much of talent and skill, infrastructure, research available within the country, within our own ecosystem. I don't think that we should go and rely on any other third-party country to build a great product, right? And I think most of the fraud companies which you have seen, I would easily say 80% of them, I would say, I don't think they have any, I would say, R&D capabilities or incubators outside India where they're doing a lot of tech development, right? So I think that's the first part. Okay. However, there is a need to have a structured, integrated forum, right? We do a lot of informal chats, we do a lot of informal communication discussions, but I don't think so. There's something like this which is required right now. I'm sorry, there's a call. I just go on a mute for a second. I'm sorry.
Sure, sure.
So I will take on from Dhruv, what Dhruv was saying. Essentially, we actually like saying these names because these names are actually in the market. You have solutions from Russia, you have solutions from Israel, and these are very, very potent solutions, or they have made enough noise so that is the reason. And most of the time, these noise are state sponsored. So if you have companies that are actually giving voice through the country, then yeah, the noise actually goes out to other places. And to a fair extent, DSCI has actually been doing the same with startups in India.
Yep.
But that coordination, like Dhruv was saying, is still internally missing. If you have a choice and you have the same price, you would always go for a product that is outside India. First, evaluate first the product in India and then choose. Because one of the very interesting things what I realized is you go to any cybersecurity conference that is outside India or any summit that is happening, we have a very strange notion that our product is not good enough. So we build so many features into it. You go outside, you check out some of the competitions that you have. They're not even close to as many features that you have, not even close to as much integrations that you have, or not even close to as much amount of defense that you can provide through your product. That means we are comparatively, most of the companies in startup segments in India are actually far ahead towards any cybersecurity solutions that they have in the counterpart areas in the West. And then all it becomes is understanding how you can close that customer faster, better. One of my mentors actually had this very interesting competition where his counterpart ended up giving his license for the product practically free because he couldn't compete with his product. And my mentor said, I'm not going to do that. So it is that good. Products, we are all, so we come from a very nice math and science background. So that, whether you like it or not, becomes a part of your product. So
that's very heartening to know. Sarvana, you want to add?
So I think I agree with both Dhruv and Umesh. The only thing to look at is, yes, Israel and Russia are traditionally known to have services with less coding errors, right? But I think, but India's been doing a good job, at least over the last 5 years, in coming with its own products. Now, yes, traditionally we were not good with investing ahead in terms of in research and infrastructure. But I think that is changing a lot, primarily because the potential is understood and agreed within the stakeholders, right? There is money if you are investing in right products and services. So there is certainly that amount of investment that is being made into providing space and zone for research and development. So that being said, what is important is that the bodies like Data Security Council of India, NASSCOM, and all the others to come up with something which is more concrete, very short action or iterative, like 15 days, every 15 days, they have to come up with something which is an outcome that can be used by the industry. That today is missing. India today is moving at the pace which is probably not adequate for us. So either the industry does create a body for themselves, which is similar to the PCI or any other framework that will help. So that will help. Apart from that, what can also be done is that, leveraging the existing good practices across the world and try to see how we rapidly adopt some of these to make sure that these are standards that will give us the ability and the command to make sure that we are seen as a cybersecurity mature nation.
I want to add what Ruth told earlier about research and product development. In countries like Canada, you get practically the whole amount back in terms of research that you invest. So and US obviously has those federal grants thrown towards different kinds of researchers. We lack that. We don't lack the initiatives. We lack the ease of conversions of those initiatives. Trust me, if it was that easy, you would have found as many cybersecurity or any deep tech startups coming from universities right from students straight away when they're graduating. Because whether you like it or not, we are creating that potential and we are actually selling that potential outside the country. So you rather try to convert it. Of course, it's the best way to learn is to failures. I rather have employees who have built up a startup at 4th year, worked out, failed, and then joined my company. It's an amazing story and learning for both sides. And otherwise, you hiring someone who actually has no understanding how startup culture or startup ecosystem works, and then you are working towards deep tech, it's a completely different focus together.
No, I agree completely on this. Just to add, Pankaj, I think I was talking to somebody yesterday in Canada. We were part of one of the initiatives a couple of years back, right? In the current context, right? They say you set up a company, and they have a distinct provinces where they call it cybersecurity accelerators, right? And it's surprising, right? And you go and be part of that accelerator, right? And the government give you a grant to hire people. They pay your entire food, salary, bill, everything, right? And then you only have to hire people, create employment, right? Create jobs, build a nice product, and then they also help you with the follow-on grants and all this, which is more conducive vis-a-vis any standard investor or investments happening in the VC market. Correct.
Great.
So I think those things has to happen. Missing completely in this country.
I'm sure. I mean, I can't speak for policymakers for sure, at least in this forum. But I have been having some private conversations, and just the other day during the HICI annual awards also, where our friend Umesh got an award, the IT Minister of Telangana, he was very upfront about the fact that more needs to be done in terms of creating this whole ecosystem. I know of several states, especially the state of Telangana, which has been trying very proactively in terms of building this. But I think like a company, like a country, like a state, we are again balancing between our resources, where to put. But I think the intent is there. Intent is there. And like all of you also alluded to, I think there is a clear understanding, to best of my knowledge, there's a good understanding that this is a great opportunity for India to make a presence. So whenever I see DSCI, NASSCOM, we have a in Hyderabad, for example, we have a Center of Excellence, which is a DSCI NASSCOM initiative, right? Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, and I've been following some of their activities. Succeed Ventures itself is Hyderabad based, which has come up with this comprehensive report. So there is certainly, and I'm sure in other parts of India also, there are many such interesting initiatives that are happening. There is definitely an intent. There is definitely a realization. I think, like all of you rightly said, we all have to put our thoughts together, forces together to create this community or create this forum which can tackle all these aspects. It be the regulation. I'm getting a lot of questions on regulation in terms of because a lot of times when there's a regulation coming from RBI, probably it's like one size fits all kind of a regulation, which may not be feasible for smaller banks and smaller institutions to take up. So these are going to be ongoing challenges. I don't think they can be resolved in one go. So I think a forum is definitely needed, and I'm sure we will from our side also pass this information to the policymakers. I'm sure some of the policymakers are also listening to these conversations, and we will see how this can be taken up. So we are almost at the fag end of our program, as it were, right? We are at 11:55. I think we have 5 or 7 minutes left. I didn't realize. I mean, it went so smoothly. The kind of perspectives all of you added, and in terms of bonhomie of the industry, it's visible on this panel also, right? I haven't seen any one of you contradicting each other. You've always been supporting and building on each other's case. So I think that augurs very well for the cybersecurity industry in India. But I have last one or two questions, and we'll see if there are more questions coming from the audience. End of the day, it is also about the kind of money that is being generated, right? I mean, everything kind of gets attracted to that. be it the talent, be it the kind of research and development we are talking about. And frankly, from a government point of view also, it has to have enough critical mass for them to start looking at it and say, oh, let's support this industry. There seems to be some great potential, right? So from that point of view, what is the kind of valuation scene that's happening in India? And maybe if you want to contrast it with a US based company or a Israel based company, or how do you see that? Is it encouraging? What would be your take on that?
Drew, this is perfect question for you.
So thanks, Umesh, and thanks, Pankaj, for asking this. Right. So I think first thing I'll ask the first question first, right? See, I think on the opportunity side, I would say there is enough opportunity locally, right? From the business standpoint, I've seen crazy inbound cross-border transactions. A lot of cybersecurity companies coming from outside, setting up their base in India. I know a lot of my friends who have never wanted to be in cybersecurity. They all are country managers of those companies, right? So that proves there is a market opportunity, right? That's the first part, right? That's one. Second thing, from the I think investor interest, I think that have grown. I see, as I said earlier, also, right? There's a lot of demand coming up in the cybersecurity space, and everybody wanted to at least have one or two companies in their overall portfolio, right? That also shows there is a demand from the interest which has been shown, right? That's point number two. When it comes to valuation, trust me, I'm still yet to figure out the maths and science behind it. to be very honest, right? If you ask me the baseline, yes, if you look at a company with the US Canada base, definitely would have a different valuation metrics, right? The unit economics completely work differently, right? And I've seen a company with $1 million revenue talking about 100 million valuation for what, on what basis, we don't know. Actually, that's what I'm saying. That's a maths and science. And here you have a $3 million company not even getting a 10 million valuation. Correct. So I think, and it's not IP is good or bad. It's a matter of unit metrics, right? And I think their investor perceive that, and also the monetary value, right? Without disrespecting anything on that ground. But I think if you are a deep tech product company, you want to build a company, you don't want to exit from the company. I think valuation has no relevance in my opinion. I think you build in an organic way, continue to grow, and there is enough. You keep on adding innovations, keep on adding IPs, and you continue to grow. And at right stage, identify a partner, not to buy a company, but to buy an IP at the right valuation in India, outside India, right? But yes, at a very high level, valuations are, I think respected, and a lot of time we keep on hearing that you should have a base in the US, you should have a couple of US customers, right? So you can drive a good valuation, right? And I heard it from everybody. I think I was not able to win over on anyone, to be honest, till date on this topic, right? Whereas I always say there is an organic growth, there's an opportunity, but yes, while you're invested in, you have to respect your investors' money and also grow and go with them, right? So yeah, opportunities on the valuation is much better outside India than India. I think it's a matter of time. I'm sure over a period when a lot of these inward investments are happening, I would say companies are coming in the country and the market is exploding. I'm sure it will reverse over a period. And I think we will see more investments, better valuations in this country, what we don't see in the current state.
Also, in India is a very interesting place for cybersecurity products to begin with. One of the reasons being we are not that compliant. Compliance is more or less like a joke in our industry landscape, forgive me the term. And that means everything that can go wrong will go wrong. That means if there is a product that is defending it, it will make sure that to cover all the bases of it. So in terms of that, the product that you are selling or you are actually giving it to a customer is far more very focused towards making sure that you don't get stumbled upon your own faults, and then any product that is coming from a different market, because that is going to be very niche specific to solving one problem but not basically providing a solution.
Right. Sarvana, you want to add anything?
I think this is something which I'm sure is a very close to our topic for Dhruv and Umesh, who are in the thick of things when it comes to startups, valuations. But what I firmly believe is that I think there will be time for the Indian companies to have parity with the international colleagues in getting similar valuation. And it's just a matter of time that we have to wait it out, and we have to stay invested in bringing in innovations and plugging into the products. And I think the product will speak for itself to command the valuation it deserves.
Yeah. Right. So let me end this discussion with a question that the nation wants to know. Right. So we've all kind of put our own wish list in terms of the number of unicorns that India should have. Right. I mean, that's the kind of talk people do. So what I want to understand from all of you, I guess probably, or your faith in cybersecurity startups, in your own startups, in the general industry as such, how much percentage of those unicorns will be contributed by the cyber security startups. 2 out of 10, 4 out of 10, 8 out of 10.
Let me ask the same question back to you, Pankaj. How many of the unicorns that you're talking about?
For me, there are at least 2 on this panel who are potential. So 2 out
Thank you
of 3
so
is a
much.
good number. You have a customer and you have 2 this thing. But what is your take on this? I mean, how are we in a position to crystal gaze and see, because I see a huge potential, frankly, and the confidence and the conviction with which all 3 of you spoke shows. And I mean, we are a country known to fix things when we face with disasters and challenges. So I think as much as we may crib about research, infrastructure, and all that, I'm also sure that it's a matter of time when people will look at it as an opportunity and suddenly will create an army of people. Yes, some fundamental things have to be worked on, no doubt about it. I'm not trying to undermine the need for being competitive, but I think there's a growing realization. And something interesting. Maybe I'll park my question and request you to answer it a little later. But there's one last question I want to introduce before we wrap up, is also about talent, and I think that's very important in this whole story. And what I mean, for example, again, JNTU, which is the largest technical university in India, incidentally based out of Hyderabad, and Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, who's the principal secretary for IT, is also the in charge VC. They have now introduced cybersecurity across all the courses, across all the programs that run under the university. And some feedback that I have been getting from professionals like all of you, practitioners like all of you, is it need not be restricted to technical engineering graduates alone, right? I mean, today when we talk about deep tech, when we talk about data science, when we talk about cybersecurity, a lot of feedback that flows in is that it's all about being open-minded. So it need not be restricted to only engineering graduates. So I quickly want your take on this talent piece of it, because I'm sure a lot of colleges, universities, and concerned people are also listening to this. And there is a growing number of courses. AICT has just introduced cybersecurity as a course, primary course in engineering. Like earlier, you used to have computer science as a course. Now you have cybersecurity also as a 4-year engineering course. So your quick take on what should people learn and what should be their focus in terms of, if I were a young professional, what are the things that I should be doing to get into this industry and to help
Perfect.
myself and help you?
So let me take the first question first, really fast. You want an unicorn out of the ecosystem or an economy out of India. You see the top unicorns that are there in the market right now. Most of them are all focused towards B2C, because our economy is that. And that B2C tapping of the market, it is still barely 10 to 11%. That means there is a huge focus towards B2C kind of economy where you have more unicorns to come. But then again, there are companies that are in-house, that are grown out of our own spaces, where Zoho and Apply, different kinds of companies, Freshdesk, these have actually built their own unicorn status by themselves. One of them actually being completely bootstrapped. Now to the other aspect of it, whether it will happen in cyber or not, depends on a lot of things. One major point that you were saying, critical mass. I think a lot of government support in terms of research grants, funding needs to happen to get that critical mass. But companies who want to build startups should not be focusing on that for any kind of help. So that should always be for and by. And now for the students part. First of all, amazing that JNTU has made this. In terms of cybersecurity, number one reason why people get hacked is lack of awareness. And if there is a course that is actually introducing you what is phishing, what is happening when you are getting an email, and the number of biggest problem is also the kind of cyber abuse that happens, where you have no idea the amount of cyber abuses that are currently happening in our country. And if you just walk into any kind of Cyberabad police station, you'll see the chaos that is happening. That means that self-understanding and self-awareness needs to actually grow, which is completely lacking in a country like ours. And it's kudos that JNTU has done this. Second point is, you're talking about different courses being introduced. I have a counter question to you. Today, everything, right from Berkeley cybersecurity course to Maryland to different kinds of courses, all of them are free. All of them are freely available to you. You have no more excuses or choices to say, hey, I don't have access to professors that are good. I don't have access to universities that are good. Like you said, university itself is providing courses. So the point is, if you want to learn cybersecurity or any kind of technology today, it's all you need is a computer and internet connection. The only thing that is needed by you is put the time in, put the effort in, convert the time and effort into practice. and that's it. That's all it basically needed. And the what comes out is something that is beyond. You might be an amazing cybersecurity professional, or you might come up with your own startup.
Okay.
Joe?
No, I think I echo with you completely on this particular point. And I think today, I think with every university, college we interact with, right, in terms of hiring and all, I think the course structure, so one, there's an addition. I don't think so there is no looking back. And I think now, I think a lot of inputs have to go from the industry leaders, from the cybersecurity practitioners about the course content. I think that's where the co-creation has to play a very, very important role than what is currently there. I think that's where I think there is always a demand. The demand and supply we generally call at the very high level, but I think can only be bridged when I think there is a cohesive or a strong integration between both on both the sides, right? And last, I think I would say there is a mentor model. Israel is very strong in mentor model. I think Umesh also talked about it in the BTech courses that they need, right? So I think mentor modeling is important in Israel. Why do you see a lot of companies from colleges or from incubators? Because there's a mentor who is actually spending time, effort, and energy, and he's also part of the game, right? I think that is what is required for all this to come up to the next level, in my opinion.
Great, very well said.
I think Pankaj, I think two ways, right? Talent is a big challenge, right? There is a need for us to flip the funnel. Today, cybersecurity talent, not just in India, across the world, is trickling in. It is not available because it is not something which you can readily produce. You need to create them over a period of time, and they are, they have to be academically qualified. They have to have the right mindset and attitude, being open and all that stuff. Now, I think I always tell this to my bosses, right? It is one of the best time to be a cybersecurity professional, but one of the worst time to be a cybersecurity manager, because attracting talent is becoming a challenge. So it is heartening to see that the government is making attempts to fill in some of the gaps in the academia, but that is not enough, right? You need to make it inclusive. You need to make sure that it is attractive. As Dhruv said, mentorship is important. Make sure that the academy and the industry is participating with each other to make sure that we are creating this professional over a period of time. Why just restrict ourselves to colleges? Why can't we start right from the high school, if that is possible, so that awareness kind of blends in, and the culture of cybersecurity and privacy comes in. Today, India does not, people do not bother divulging their personal information to anybody else, right? That culture exists today. Hence, we are okay to connect with any connectivity free, available free of cost in the cafes, right? That culture has to slowly change. That will change only when we start this right from school as a program, leading into multiple years. So I think with all that stuff in the next few years, we are hoping that the funnel will get flipped.
Very well said. I think like you teach kids how to traverse or cross the road, I think now they have to learn how to cross the digital highway, as it were, right? Just last one question, just struck me. Is there a reason to believe, and I genuinely want to know your opinion on this, to believe that there is a scope for a lot of women professionals also in cybersecurity? Because is there something that they have a much better perception in terms of threat, or in terms of being keeping things more secure? Do you see a role of women professionals also in cybersecurity in particular? Because one complaint is always that there are less women professional who are joining the workforce. But is cybersecurity something which kind of is a little more pro or natural to them? I don't know. It just came to my mind, so I wanted to ask this question.
So one of the very interesting things is the only B2C cybersecurity startup that I know of is actually being run by a woman from Bangalore, where she takes care of all the complaints and abuses that comes in. She works with the different cyber police to make sure that the individual rights are protected and not abused. And also very interestingly, if you compare different market segments, of course the women are still less in cybersecurity, but comparatively, so if you compare the amount of women who are in cybersecurity to other segments, there are actually more. This because the only kind of recognition you need in cybersecurity is your talent. There's no glass ceiling as such, because for you, your work actually defines what you're doing, and it's very core. Security science and everything that goes along with it is defined by what you're learning, what you're doing, and what your team is doing. Because your end of the day, there is that simple weakest link that can break the entire chain. That means the entire team is working together. That means all of them are growing together. So that way, it's a very good place for women to actually grow. And coming into cybersecurity, they also know their rights and privacies and everything else. So it's also a very safer place to actually for them to grow. Dhruv?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I don't think so. Anything I want to add to this. I think, across board we are seeing, I think females are adding a lot of value across, be it in development, coding, consulting, audit. So I think, it's happening.
Absolutely. I think women would be naturally a good choice for cybersecurity because they come out with an ability to multitask amazingly, right?
Yeah.
So I'm seeing that at the lower level, I see a lot of women. I need to find out why we are not seeing that many number of women at a middle and higher senior level. But I'm sure with time, I think they will choose to stick to the same profession for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
All right, great. I think I can go on with this conversation. We've actually short 10 minutes more than our time. But thank you so much for this wonderful and insightful conversation, and such a nice way in which each one of you picked up the points from the other. And wish you all the best, be it a company like Sarvana is in charge of, or be it the startup founders that we have here. And we certainly hope to see the cybersecurity ecosystem thriving. And I'm sure in due course, both as Succeed Ventures and at various other forums, we will also try to see how we can get all of you together on some of these frameworks, some of these forums that you talked about. Thank you so much once again for your lovely insights. Thank you.
Thanks, Pankaj. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Right. So with this, I think we'll wrap up this session. It was great to have these experts here. And I think I would like to conclude by thanking Succeed Ventures for giving all of us this opportunity to have an engaging discussion. And please go on their website, look at the cybersecurity report, a very comprehensive report that has been put in public domain. So thank you so much. Over to you, Pranavi.